And welcome to another Colin Crandall interview for United Force Combat. Colin Crandall and I have one of the premier sports handicappers from Australia, Aussie fight fan, my brother right over here. How are you doing today, brother?
Yeah, good mate. Yep. Excited to talk about this card.
Absolutely, me too, mate. Glad to have you here. So let's jump on into this, and everyone should know we are talking about UFC 237 coming in this Saturday strong at with the main event rematch of Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval. The Battle of the Brandons co-main is also a rematch with I had it right there, co-main with Yair El Pantera Rodriguez against Brian Ortega. T-City, going to be some interesting fights. But let's start a bit lower down. And I think the first fight on the main card is going to be the ladies, Yasmin Hadagi against Sam Hughes. Why don't you start on that one first, and I'll jump on after you. By the way, everyone, we're also expecting my nephew Trevor Carnes. He may or may not make it, but hopefully he will. But for now, I leave it to Aussie fight fan. What do you think of the ladies here? Kind of an interesting matchup, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean I was a little bit surprised with how much the line has just been smashed. I mean, Yasmin is now like minus 600. I'm seeing minus 600s out there.
Wow, that's
That's
right.
a crazy line. Like I can't
Yeah,
believe anyone
yeah,
is even
that's
chucking these in multis or parlays now. Sam Hughes at plus 480. I mean, that's kind of crazy for me. Like if it gets any further, I'm not going to have a choice. I'm going to have to put a little something on it.
yeah.
Um, I just don't see why she's this big a favorite. I think she does win. I think she wins more often than not. But you just never know. Sam Hughes, she's kind of a strong girl, kind of clinch her, hold her up against the cage, maybe win some minutes that way. Other than that, it should be Yasmin's fight. But yeah, whenever I see numbers that crazy on a female fight, I kind of assume it's probably going the distance, in a women's fight more often than not. Then you think, what's the underdog playing by split decision, and then you start getting kind of crazy numbers out there for that. So at this point, there's nothing worth playing on this fight.
Yeah.
Um, I'll wait and see if the odds move even further and kind of force my hand, but yeah, not at these odds, no way.
Yeah, I agree. It's very strange. I could have seen these odds if Hadagi had continued her unbeaten streak, but getting stopped by Denise Gomes in 20 seconds into the first round, that's not a great look. And then to make that fighter a huge favorite, and especially with Sam Hughes coming off a win and coming off some pretty good fights, she actually is 3-1 in her last four. She always fights really hard. Obviously, Hedegi is going to be wanting to come and get that bad taste out of her mouth, but she really isn't a proven commodity at this level. So those odds are ridiculous to put on a fighter who just got knocked out immediately. Is not that wise. But then Sam Hughes for the win, even though with that odds, you could sprinkle a small amount of money for, as far as I'm concerned, maybe on the money line. But it's a no play if we're looking at it from professional gambling standpoint. That's for sure, and could be very close. If Hedegi comes in and just blows her out of there, then she's probably right back on track. But just like in any kind of investments, let's see that happen first, and then you can go ahead and bet on the favorite. But laying minus 600 is just never a smart thing, as you know. Um, so let's move on to the next fight on the card rather. And this is kind of an interesting one. I'll go first on this one. Raul Rosas Jr., the 18, or maybe he's 19 years old. Yep, 19-year-old.
He's 19.
Yep, prodigy, came into the league as 18 years old, 8-1. He is now 2-1 in the UFC, having beaten Jay Perrin with that face crank in his debut. Came up against a very tough Christian Rogers and did lose pretty decisively, but went the distance. And then came back against kind of a tailor-made opponent in Terrence Mitchell. That was on September 16th, so October, November, December, January, February, 5 months away. He's 19 now, a little bit more seasoned. Ricky Tercios is a really good fighter. Ricky Tercios actually had some push behind him, not quite as much as Rosas, but kind of a lot. He was the Ultimate Fighter winner, and then he came in and started out good with a split decision win. Interestingly enough, both of his UFC wins are split decisions. He got a split decision win over Brady Heastand, a split decision win over Kevin Natividad, and then he did lose to Amon Zahabi. So essentially, he's a 2-1 fighter that could be 1-2, or could be 0-3 actually. And so that's why they're bringing him in here. Although he really had a great start to his career with, it looks like, 9 fights on the win side. But I'm having a feeling he's going to be what, -300. Let's see. No, not quite. So they got 2.5 to 1 for Rosas Jr. and Tercios. I mean, it's obvious what they're doing for Rosas is bringing in guys other than Christian Rodriguez that they're pretty confident he can beat. And it's funny because Tercios is really not a bad fighter at all. But he's, the A side is going to be Rosas. If it's a close fight, the judges will give it to Rosas, as we see almost every time when there's an A side. But you know what? At 19-year-old, I don't like that. I don't have a lot of confidence in 19-year-olds, even a tough kid like this. And I think Tercios is going to make this a tough fight. But I tell you this, if Tercios comes in and gets smashed, then I'm just going to start thinking something's fishy around here, because Tercios not a bad fighter. And if they bring in good fighters who mysteriously don't perform against these prodigies, then something stinks on that. So I'm really hoping we don't see that, because I don't see any reason for this. Tercios is a tough kid, and I don't see any reason why he gets absolutely smoked by Rosas. And so for me, again, this is kind of a dog or pass or a no bet, and betting against the A side doesn't make sense. So I kind of feel the only way Tercios wins this, if he wins this by stoppage. And if we examine that really quickly, then we are looking at Ricky Tercios with 12 wins out of his 15 fights. He's got only 3 KOs and 1 submission, so he hardly ever stops anyone. So that should be a good payout, but a bit silly to bet. But my thought perhaps would be maybe looking at something like a Tercios by stoppage or KO, maybe getting a 10 to 1 odds on that for a very small wager. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, he did open as a -300 favorite, and then people have kind of bet Tercios a little bit. So people are kind of leaning the same way as you. I'm kind of on the other side, though. I think this is going to be a bit of a smash spot. I think Ruas gets him down, and I think he probably submits him in the first round. The longer the fight goes, I think it gets further and further away from Ruas, and probably favors Tercios a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tercios wins a decision, probably strongly in round 3, probably comes on a bit stronger. But he just hasn't really shown that he's going to come out and throw a heavy volume. Well, he's shown that he'll throw a heavy volume, but he doesn't really land that much. There's funny memes going around at the moment with, I think he landed 25 of his 230 strikes in his last fight. Kind of just looked like Elias Theodoro just throwing everything and landed nothing.
Yep. God bless.
But you know what you're kind of going to get out of Ruas? He's gonna he kind of accidentally won by knockout last time. I don't think he was really trying to knock the guy out.
I think you're right.
I was hoping he got the submission in that fight. Going against C-Rod, everyone was saying at the time, this is not the time for these guys to be facing each other. Two good up and coming prospects, and one of them's going to get a loss. And obviously that was Ruas in this spot. But I think he gets takedowns pretty easily here. I don't think he's going to have to spend too much energy trying to get them. But we should mention that this is in Mexico City as well. That's
right. That's right.
It's at like 7,800 feet, which once you get to 8,000 feet, that's kind of when you're getting the altitude sickness and things like that. So I've been looking up a little bit about it. It pretty much says it takes, 5 days to acclimatize, 3 to 5 days. Says keep hydrated, don't exert yourself. Kind of the opposite of what all these blokes are doing. They're going down there a week before the fight, just totally exerting themselves, running up that bloody mountain, and and they're cutting weight. So the one thing the UFC did, they only put lightweights and lower on this card. There's not even a welterweight on this card. So they've only put the smaller guys on, and obviously a lot of Mexicans. So you got to assume the Mexican guys, the guys that have been fighting at Lux organization over there, they're going to have a good a really good advantage in some of these fights. But Ruas kind of does get tired, you know. He does. He is kind of an action fighter. So what's he going to look like in round three? Maybe Tercios can get a stoppage late in the fight, but I'm going to assume. I think Ruas round one or two submission is what I'm going to be looking at.
Could be, although Tercios has not yet been submitted, but he has been stopped by punches. But I mean, it's interesting, and then Rosas obviously has stopped several people by submission, actually 5 people. So yeah, he's got some good jits. Very possible. It's going to be interesting to see. Why is that light going that shiny? Look at that, and that's what it is. Crap. Well, I'm just going to have to stand in front of that. Okay. Anyway, lighting bad for the first time here. Anyway, but yeah, we'll see. It should be interesting. But yeah, it seems like an odd matchup. But you're right. In Mexico, it seems like they're more than likely possibly going to go for Rosas Jr. possibly as a somewhat of a hometown fan, although he is I think Tercios, I think Rosas, I think is Mexican American. Tercios, I'm not sure. He seems like he is Hispanic. He may be Mexican American also, although I'm not sure. But the young prodigy people cheer for is Rosas, and that's kind of how that works. So we'll see what happens. All right, next up we have Daniel Zellhuber and Francisco Prado. This is an interesting matchup. Zellhuber is a very tough, good-looking prospect, 6'1", lightweight, very tall, big kid, only 24 years old, 14-1 with 10 finishes, 7 by KO and 3 by submission out of Mexico City. In the UFC, he is a 2-1, having lost his first fight to a tough Trey Ogden, then beating Groovy Lando Venata and Christos Giagos, and finishing him with a very impressive anaconda choke just last September. Very, very good looking prospect, Daniel Zellhuber, and the Golden Boy, aptly named Francisco Prado, is fighting out of Argentina and only 21 years old. Wow, we have a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old. 21-year-old is a bit shorter, 5'10", 155, a bit more of a stocky, muscular, lightweight. And he is also a finisher, 100% finish rate. These are some finishers here. Prado, though, has only had 2 UFC fights, and he is 1-1, losing to your mate there, Jamie Malarkey. And Malarkey is a tough guy, or is he a New Zealander? He's an Aussie. I thought so. Your mate there, Jamie Malarkey, as I properly said. And then Jamie's had a bit of a hard time, but at his best was a very tough fighter. And he did beat this Francisco Prado. Prado came in and beat Osman Azatar, who looked kind of like a shell of his former self since he came back from his suspension. So again, this is probably another crush fight. I'm going to imagine minus 400 for Zellhuber. Let's take a look here. No, not quite. Minus 275, minus 290. Again, the A side here is Zellhuber. But Prado again only has 1 loss, and it was to Jamie Malarkey, who's very tough. They're both big finishers. So Prado has 6 submissions and 6 KOs, very balanced. Zellhuber has 7 KOs and 3 submissions. So perhaps Prado might want to take this to the ground, but pick your poison. This is probably tailor-made for Daniel Zellhuber. Oh, I don't love the odds, but I guess they're fair enough. So I would go Daniel Zellhuber, possibly by decision, or just to me on the money line. I can't get a good read on whether this will finish or not. It probably does, being that both of the guys really go for it. What do you think?
Yeah, I was kind of leaning a lot towards Zellhuber. I almost bet him. Um, and the more I kind of looked into it, he kind of gets hit a lot. I know he's the taller, the longer guy, but he's just very offensively minded on the feet. He's just got a willingness to get hit. I don't understand it. He, like you said in his last fight, he got the choke, but it's not really what he's thinking about. He's probably going to snatch a choke after he knocks you down, or if you take him down, he might try to get something. If I thought he was going to get takedowns in this fight, I'd be a lot more willing to bet him. But given the fact that he's fighting this Prado guy, he's going to be longer. He's going to be probably got the better punch for punch power. I'd say he's going to keep it standing. Likes to throw those kicks from distance and really work things out on the feet. But on the other side, Prado, man, he's got power too. And if he does connect, the way he throws his elbows, he throws them like overhands. He just puts his whole weight behind him, throws spinning elbows, connected in his last fight. And if he hurts you, he's going to go for it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the first round KO. I seen his first round knockout. You can get it for 13-1. But then his just knockout prop was 650-1. So I thought, oh, might as well just bet double and just get that knockout. Cover me for the other 2 rounds just in case. So yeah, I've got him knockout, but I'm probably going to play Zellhuber sub just in case. Prado shooting for takedowns and he manages to grab his neck. So
Could
we'll
very well
probably have
be.
both sides of that fight.
Makes sense. That's a good bet. Always good. Always great stuff you do with the props. And always look for this man. If you guys are talking about betting props, he really knows his stuff. And it's going to be an interesting fight, definitely. So I think we are now on to the final 2 fights. And we are looking at the main coming up, Brandon versus Brandon. But now we're looking at Yair versus Brian Ortega. And I believe that, and I know Yair is a Mexican national, and Brian Ortega, though, I believe is indeed a Mexican American. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of people possibly cheering for Ortega, but more cheering for Yair. Really interesting fight. Yair is 31. I have a feeling Ortega is slightly older than that, although I don't think he's much older. Let me take a look here. And he is 33, so a bit older. Let's see how long they've been at this, and I'll let you go first with a breakdown. So coming into his 14th year as a pro is Brian Ortega, and Yair is coming into his 13th year as a pro. So really both great fighters. Obviously one is a striker, one is a grappler. Yair's got 13 finishes out of his 19 wins with 8 KOs, but actually 5 submissions. And his submissions are not bad at all, as we know. Brian Ortega, though, the jiu-jitsu black belt, 15 wins and 10 finishes, 7 by submission. I'll let you go first on this one. This is an interesting matchup, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I've kind of been flipping both sides on this fight, but just going by the money line, you kind of, I think you kind of got to go Ortega here. I think he can win a decision. I think he can obviously get a submission. But I was a bit surprised that this fight's 5 rounds, being a co-main event, no belt on the line. It's pretty clear to me that the winner of this fight, they really want it to be decisive, and for the reason that they're probably going to get a title shot. Maybe not the next shot, but maybe the one after that. So I think both guys know what's on the line. Yeah, this is a rematch. Obviously, Ortega got injured last time. It was kind of a weird start. It kind of looks like Yair might have hurt his arm going for that armbar, and then whatever happened after that might have been a result from the submission. But Ortega's really good on the ground. He is really good,
Yeah.
and we've seen Volk get Rodriguez down and what Volk could do to him. Brian Ortega is more of a submission guy. He's probably going to get position and work on submissions more than just kind of punching him up a bit. But I mean, yeah, he's got to be real careful on his back. Like we've seen in that short 1 round that they had previously, that Ortega did manage to get him down. Didn't get to do too much of what he wanted to do, but I assume he's probably going to get it down again. The only thing is this fight goes a little bit late. I kind of favor the grappler early and the striker late. It's a lot harder to get those takedowns when, it's a lot easier to land punches than takedowns in that 4th and 5th round. So these guys are going to be, they're both action guys. They're going to be looking pretty rough round 4 and 5. I kind of lean towards Rodriguez late. So I've already got a bet on Rodriguez round 4 and 5, and I'm definitely going to hit some Ortega sub as well. But I don't really think it goes the distance. I think it's Brian early or Yair late.
I like that. Excellent analysis, and it makes perfect sense to me. The way you laid that out is right on the money. Yeah, this is a big fight for both of them. Brian being 2 years older, he's got a little bit more urgency, but I think they just both really want the win. They need the win. They both would be interesting matchups for our champion, Ilia Topuria. And definitely, I think this is going to be a banger of a fight. And I think definitely that the Ortega early and Yair late, right, is what you're saying is a good bet, or betting just the sub for Ortega. And then what would you bet if it was on Yair, just the money line pretty much, or a knockout, or both?
Yeah, I got him just the rounds for the late round. There was not much to play with. I think it was $1 difference between his just to win in that round or to win by KO. So why risk it for you never know. And
Yep.
exhaustion, tap out due to exhaustion, he could get a position he wouldn't normally get if Ortega's really tired in those last rounds. So
Yeah.
why not? And he did go for a submission in that first fight. So
Yep, he did. He did. So it's going to be interesting to see how close he's willing to get to Ortega again with the grappling, because that could be a lot of danger, and Ortega this time could really take advantage and hurt Yair's arm instead of the injury the other way around when attempting the submission. All right, now on to and that Yair favored by about 1.5 to 1 in that card. By the way, I didn't announce that. Then we
Yeah,
have
sorry,
the
just before we get off this, with the previous fight, it was kind of flipped the other way. So Ortega was the favorite and Yair was the underdog. Now we've seen how that fight really, we got to see one round of it, and now the line's flipped. I don't necessarily think Ortega lost that round. I think he was probably winning that round, to be honest. So
yeah. So
a
that is
bit
kind of
bit
weird.
interesting
Yeah.
that the line totally flipped, even though he kind of got the win by TKO, I guess they called it, did they?
I
So,
think so. Yeah.
but it was due to injury. So I'm surprised that the line flipped.
Yeah,
That
that
has
is
been a
strange.
few years, and Ortega hasn't been fighting. So
Yeah, that's possibly why, the recency and the ring rust, the cage rust that people assume he's going to have. So great point. Appreciate that. If I can block out this stupid thing here. The next is the main event, Brandon versus Brandon. Both really good guys. I've interviewed Brandon Royval, I think a couple times before the pandemic or earlier in the early in the pandemic, on my old video show, the MMA Power Hour. I interviewed Brandon Moreno a couple times, also in person after fights, and both really, really good guys. Brandon Moreno is a big favorite here, or really a fairly big favorite here, as you would think he would be. And I'm trying to click on it, and of course, it's not letting me do it. But I believe I saw something like -300. Did you see
yeah,
American
yeah,
odds?
that
Is it?
sounds
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Okay. And so they're really not letting people have a lot of faith in Ortega. I mean, the bottom line is they both did fought Pantoja. I felt Brandon beat him. He was right in there with him. I felt he edged him, although it was really close. And Pantoja kept on being taken down. Sometimes with these tall, lanky guys, they're just going to be taken down. I like both of them. I know Pantoja. I mean, Royval trains with Factory X, and I've interviewed Coach Mark Montoya. They're really one of the truly good guys in this industry. Love to see his team win. Brandon Moreno, such a good guy though. So Brandon versus Brandon, it's an important fight. Both guys are young. I think they're both on the right side of 30, although maybe just barely. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I think I mean, it's a loss will be a big setback to both, because if Brandon Moreno loses to Brandon Royval, then it really sets him way back from where he kind of is right now prior to this fight. Royval, if he loses, it's kind of expected he lost, but that way it would also be a good setback because it'd be 2 losses in a row. So this is a really important fight for both men. And I'm going to be cheering for Royval because how much I like that team over at Factory X, but I think probably Brandon Moreno is the better fighter. He's a brilliant fighter. In my opinion, he still should be the champion. And not only that, I think he's 4 years, 5 years younger than Pantoja. So he's got time. I think the next time he fights Pantoja, he beats him. And then if Pantoja waits too many more years, he's going to really get smashed by Moreno. And I think he lost that first one. But Brandon Moreno probably wins this fight. The strategy, I know Royval's team is going to come up with something good in those knees, I think, because he's what, 4 inches taller than Moreno. But I think Moreno is just, gonna want to come out after that, get that bad taste out of his mouth from a fight that he lost to the decision, but many feel he'd won. What are your thoughts on that, and what kind of bets are you looking at for this one?
yeah. So I've kind of been leaning more towards Royval actually.
Hmm,
I just rewatching their first fight, and that was another one just like the co-main event. This is a rematch due to arm injury. He kind of popped his shoulder, his right shoulder kind of popped out of place with a
that's
few
right.
seconds left in the first round. Can't remember the referee, but the referee stopped the fight, and Montoya just casually walked over to his corner and just popped his arm straight back into place. So if I had to go on to the end of that round, I'm sure we would have seen round two. Um, but I really don't think Moreno should be this big a favorite here. I don't think he's a 3-1 favorite. Like you just said, Royval's a bigger guy. He's also very good on the ground. His offensive wrestling isn't as good. Moreno's definitely the better wrestler. But if Moreno doesn't get multiple takedowns in this fight, I don't think he's going to look like a 3-1 favorite. We've seen he got some pretty good positions. Almost got him in a twist side control. He could have kind of had that position. He got a really good face crank on him. Um, but without that, in the stand-up part we've seen, I think it was very close. Royval's going to come out. He's going to throw a lot of kicks. Moreno's probably going to try to catch one or two of them, get a takedown off that. But he's pretty busy off his back too. He's not going to just lay there and, against even better grapplers, he's been in a bit of trouble off his back. But that's kind of what you learn from. He knows he's in the spotlight now. He's got to get back up. He's got to keep going. So what I really like in this fight though is, fight to end in split decision is plus 450, which I think if it goes to the cards, I think it's going to look pretty close. But the one I really like is Brandon Royval to win by split decision is 26-1.
Wow.
So I think that is just, if you're saying it goes to split is 550, but him to win by split is 26. I mean,
Crazy.
I have to kind of play that out of principle.
Yeah.
So I do think he kind of makes it very close. I do think it goes the distance. And those last couple of rounds, these guys are both action fighters too. I know they're lighter weighted guys, but sucking in all that altitude up there, they're going to be tired. Those last couple of rounds are going to be close. They're going to be sloppy. I think Royval probably needs to put on a bit of a better performance in order to get a judge's nod in Mexico. But that those kind of odds, 26-1. I'm definitely going to have a play on that and hope for the best.
Without a doubt, I like that split decision by Royval. We've only got a minute and a half here left, so I'm going to say that we will do a quick recap, except I can't even see anything on this damn computer. So I think we both feel that Hardigui probably beats Sam Hughes, but not really, no play really there. Rosas probably beats Tercios, but Tercios is live in that fight. And then the only other two were the co-main and main, or was there a third one I left out? There's only four.
The Zellhuber
Zellhuber,
Prado.
yeah, Zellhuber
Yeah.
Prado. I think we're both on Zellhuber, but it could be a tough fight. And then we have we're looking at the T City Ortega and Yair. I'm on the fence on that. I guess it forced. I don't even know. I maybe I think looking at what value is on that, the bets you mentioned, but I think I just have no way. To me, it's a pickup. But the value at plus 190 or whatever it is definitely on
130, I think.
130. Okay, so it's still value on T City, and then Brandon Moreno is going to be a tough fight. I think you're leaning more Royval than I am. Anyway, this is about to die, so hope you guys enjoyed it. For my mate, Aussie Fight Fan, thank you for joining me, brother. I really appreciate you always. And we will bring you guys more every week. United Force Combat. Check us out. Peace.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate. Let me see.